Your eyes and your brain will lie to you, and eventually you will find yourself looking back at photos that you edited a day before or whatever and going, what? Think of a blender, you're making a smoothie, you put them in there, you turn it on, and it's like, ooh. Just keep that in mind anytime you're editing. Always give yourself a chance to come back with fresh eyes later. If you want to be a professional, do this. You don't want to be afraid to just tinker with your settings. Hey everybody, I'm Emma Berman, I'm a wedding photographer, and today I'm going to talk about color grading in Lightroom. There is a panel in Lightroom specifically called color grading, and then we're also going to be talking about the HSL panel and white balance a bit. And I wanted to start off by showing you guys this black and white gradient, so there's no color at all in this photo. It is white to gray to black, which means it's got whites to midtones, so highlights, midtones, shadows, blacks. So if we go down here to our HSL panel, it's important to note that HSL does not add color to a photo that is not already there. It can only control what is already present in an image. So if I go to saturation for red and bump it all the way up or bump it all the way down, it doesn't matter. Nothing's happening. There is no red in this image. I could do that for all of these colors and nothing would happen. Same with, hue or luminance, nothing's going to happen. The difference between HSL and the panel called color grading is that color grading can actually add color to an image that was not previously there. And you can do it in one of three ways. One, you can add the color to shadows, you can add the color to midtones, or you could add the color to highlights. And I'm going to show you guys just on this black and white gradient how that looks because it makes it the most obvious. So let's say for shadows, let's do purple because we're crazy. I'm going to bring that up and you can see over on the left in the shadows, we've got that purple. Now blacks are still black because there's no room for any purple in the black, right? It's completely black. So if we wanted the purple to go further over into the dark area there, you could raise the luminance and see how that brings some of the purple into the black. Or I could do the opposite and make the purple even less prominent by bringing the luminance down. And then let's go to midtones. Let's try yellow. And I'm gonna bring that saturation up. See, we're getting those midtones turning that weird yellow color. I know it's a happy yellow color, it just looks weird with purple. Luminance for this one, because we're not working with pure whites or pure blacks in midtones, changing the luminance isn't necessarily going to change the amount of the image that it fills. Whereas if you're changing the luminance for shadows, it's going to either push it more into the blacks or retract it even more from the shadows itself. So it doesn't do quite the same thing in midtones as it would for shadows or highlights. Speaking of highlights, let's go over there and let's do this tealy greenish blue. And let's bump that up pretty high. See how even the furthest right portion of this photo is still pure white. Even though I've bumped the saturation up to 100, it's still pure white all the way over here on the far, far end. The way to make your blues reach all the way over is to bring that luminance down. It's like decreasing brightness, so you're allowing more color to shine through because it's not just blown out with white with the brightness. Yeah, that kind of shows you an example. That kind of gives you an idea of what those three color grading wheels can impact. Obviously, in this image, they made it very simple. I just found this on the internet. They made it really simple by just having it go from black to gray, midtones to white. And so obviously it makes it very easy because then you're seeing the colors in very specific places. In a regular image, you're going to have some highlights here, some highlights there, some highlights there. Same thing with, shadows and midtones. It's all mixed all together. So it's going to look a lot different than this. The purpose of this was just to make it super clear what is being impacted when you mess with these color wheels. Down below it, we have this thing called blending and balance. And regardless of which wheel you're on, your blending and balance is the same for all of them. It's separate from the individual wheel. So what I'm trying to say, example, blending, say I go to 89 there and I'm in highlights right now. If I go to shadows, still 89. It's not impacted by that. Maybe no one else thought that it was, but when I first started, I thought that was for each wheel individually. I thought it would change each time. Also, this little drop down triangle here, if you click that, this is how it automatically appears when you pull this panel up. And so then you can actually physically grab this and like move it around, change its location, change the saturation. I feel like it gives me too much power, and it doesn't do fine enough adjustments for my liking, or at least I'm not able to do fine enough adjustments. So I like to use that little drop down menu to change hue and saturation with sliders instead. Okay, now let's talk blending and balance. Blending is pretty self-explanatory. I don't think I really need to even honestly explain that very much. See how this right here is 3 distinct colors all the way to the right. It kind of, I mean, the blue and the yellow merged, and the purple merged a lot with the yellow too. So it's that one's not really hard to understand. You know, when in doubt, think of a blender. You're making a smoothie, you put them in there, you turn it on, and it's like, woo! Balance is going to either lean the colors of the photo more toward the highlight colors or more toward the shadows colors. So we've got purple in the shadows and this tealish blue in the highlights. If we take the balance all the way to the left, you're going to notice that the color of the shadows, which in this instance is purple, is overtaking the image. It's the majority. You go the opposite way, it's vice versa. This is nice because then say you want to add a certain color to the highlights, but you're really wanting to keep it super subtle and you don't want the focus necessarily to be on that. And even though you only added, 2 saturation, you still want to make sure it's like focused more on the shadow color versus this highlight color that you introduced ever so slightly. Then you could just, bring that balance down so that it's focused more on the color of the shadows. That's why I got this image, because it makes it easier to understand. I'm a visual learner, so I thought this would be just a more straightforward way to understand. Okay, let's try editing some photos and try a little color grading and color editing. So this one here is on a lake. We got a couple on a boat. We got some light rays coming over this mountain hill thing here. This one, I'm gonna start by I'm gonna hit auto white balance, see what it does. It makes it quite warm, and honestly, I really loved the blues that we were getting in the image, so I'm gonna let's see what it was before. So it was at 58, auto put it to 75, so I'm gonna find a happy medium here. Let's try 67. That feels nice. And then for the tint, I feel like that looks pretty good. So somewhere right in that area is great with me. I'm gonna bring exposure up a little bit. I don't want to lose the whites and the highlights there, so I'm gonna just bring highlights down a little bit. Bring that up a tiny bit more. Okay, I'm gonna jump down into color mixer here, the HSL panel. I want to make sure that I have my blue hue exactly where I want it because it's so much of the image. So I'm starting there. Let's see. I do really love the more teal end of things. I feel like it makes it a little bit more oceany looking. Even though this is a lake, I want it to feel a little bit more oceanic, salty sea air kind of thing, which for me is probably going to land right around -4, -5 of the blue here. I don't want to go crazy. That's the other thing, is when you stare at your screen for long enough, at the same image for long enough, and you're making these minute changes, you're gonna think, oh, I'm making the subtlest of changes. It's all tiny or whatever, but these things add up, and your eyes and your brain will lie to you. And eventually you will find yourself looking back at photos that you edited a day before or whatever and going, what? Just keep that in mind anytime you're editing. Always give yourself a chance to come back with fresh eyes later. So brought the hue down a little bit there on the blue so that we're more in the teals. And then I'm gonna leave saturation alone because we're gonna get into the color grading panel. And I feel like we're gonna introduce some colors, and I don't wanna go too crazy with adding so much color that it looks unrealistic. So I'm gonna leave saturation alone for now. And there's not a ton of other colors here. One thing I'll do is I'll grab this little dropper guy, whatever he's called, and I'm gonna hover around different parts of the image and just see what colors over here highlight, so that like which ones pop up as which ones register as being in the photo. So far it's like all blue. It like went to magenta for a second. Oh. Oh. Okay, we got a little bit of like oranges and yellows in the housing stuff up here on this hill. Honestly, the majority of this image is gonna be very impacted by our blue slider. I'm gonna bring the blue luminance down a little bit because I want to keep those details. I want to like really see the blue. I don't want it to get too bright. I'm also gonna go up here and bring highlights down a little bit more. Actually, I'm not gonna do it too much because I like the highlights in most of the photo. I wanna see the sky more, so let's go do, I know that's not the point of this video, but let's go do a sky mask really quick. And let's bring highlights down, maybe exposure down a hint. And then let's saturate it a bit, just so we have a little bit more sky. And then might bring it a teensy bit this way, just to give it a little bit more of a teal look to go with the water. And this is all so subtle, you're probably like, how do you tell if it's teal or blue? It's very subtle and honestly probably subjective, but I'm just going off of the slider is in the teal direction, therefore teal. Made the sky a little more visible. Let's do a little before and after here. I'm hitting the button right below my delete key, my backspace key. It's the one that has a backslash on it so that I can see before and then after. This is already done so much. Just changing white balance, adjusting the blue a bit. Like, this is kind of crazy actually how much it's done. Let's get down into the color grading wheels. We're gonna go first to shadows. And if you wanna go for a more cinematic look, like traditional cinematic, high-end, professional, please take me seriously kind of color grading, you wanna introduce some blues into your shadows, just ever so slightly. That'll give you that more cinematic look. So honestly, probably gonna do like saturation 4, keeping it simple. And then this feels like a photo that has some really cool contrast in it, just with those light rays coming in. There's some really beautiful contrast between the bright spots and the shadows. So I'm gonna bring my luminance down a little because it makes for a more contrasted look. For the highlights, we're gonna add a little bit of warmth here because it is daytime and it was, the sun was out. So I like the idea of adding a little warmth to those highlights there. Here's if it's like crazy high there. That's like way too much. Also too pink. I want it more golden. Okay. So let's see, maybe let's see what that looks like, and then let's mess around with luminance, see what we like better. Probably just gonna leave it at 0. That looks the best to me. Okay, so this is right now with color grading. I'm hitting this little eye symbol and holding it down so that I can see what the edit looks like without the color grading, and then with, without, without, with. It's subtle, but I'm digging it. Let's see what happens if we even add a little bit more blue just to make it pop a bit more. As you can see, it already is doing quite a lot and we're changing very little, but it's making a big deal. Let's look at our before and after again. Before, after, before, after. I will say this has a bit of a greenishness to it that I feel like is not present in the original. And it's almost a little too warm for my liking, at least in their skin. So I'm going to bring the white balance down a little bit more, and I'm going to bring the tint up into the magenta region a little more. It felt like it was too warm and too green. That feels better. Let's go down to saturation. Let's just see what happens when we decrease blue and increase blue. That's crazy. So if you want to be a professional, do this. Don't do that. So that's also helpful just for figuring out where your blues are in the photo specifically, because even, there will be things that you don't expect, like in his white shirt, there's blues in the shadows of it. So it's nice to sometimes just bump up that saturation just for the sake of figuring out where this color is present in an image. Let's mess with a cool sunset. And it was also kind of raining in this instance. Let's start with white balance, go auto. I like the idea that the couple is somewhat silhouetted. We do have, parts of his suit are lost, the detail, not lost forever, but like because of where we have the exposure right now, he is dark. Like we can't see a lot of detail in his suit, but I feel like I'm okay with that in this instance because I want the focus to be on the sky and not on the couple necessarily, even though they are what's in focus. Let's go on down to HSL because this is where we're gonna have a little fun with this sunset here. We've got like 3 main colors in here. There's like a yellowy orange, there's a reddish pink, and then there's like a purpley blue. So we're gonna mess with the HSL sliders so that we can make this sunset. We're gonna mess with it a little, make it a little different than it actually was, which I don't normally do, but for the sake of this video, I think it'd be a little fun experiment. I'm going to bring Oranges a little bit up more toward yellow. Reds, I'm going to bring a little bit more toward pink so that I'm trying to create more contrast in color between this first color, which is like orangey, and the second color, which is like pinky, reddish, maybe kind of purple. So I'm trying to make enough contrast there. Saturation, I'm going to bring, ooh, see, if you go too far, it does weird things, but I'm going to bring it up a bit. Maybe luminance down, not too much. And then orange saturation. And then something else to keep in mind though is even though this middle one here is like a reddish pink, there are elements of orange within it, most likely, that as I'm adjusting saturation on orange, it's also adjusting the saturation of the reddish pink because it has that orange within it. So that's something that I think is important to keep in mind as you adjust different colors. Keep in mind certain colors have other colors in them, which is, I mean, that's the whole RGB thing. Now I'm gonna go ahead and mess with the saturation of blue. See if we bring that up, it also impacts things like her veil, which is definitely a very cool white versus her dress is more of a neutral white. But if you mess with the blue, you start to see it in other areas where you might not expect it, like this gray pavement, this white wall here. Blue is sneaky. That's why it's hard when blue is used in decor, because sometimes you want to just bring blues down to get blue out of that guy's white shirt or whatever. But if the girl is wearing a blue dress, you can't just bring the saturation down on it. So then you got to mask his shirt. And anyway, I am going to bring this down into the teal area. And then for saturation, I'm going to leave it alone because I don't want to bring more blue into her veil and into the pavement and everything. Let's get into the color grading wheels. For shadows, definitely want a blue look for this one, especially since it's like evening. It's like blue hour here, right after golden hour. It's, you know, the day is drawing to a close. We want it to feel like evening. I don't want to force this to feel like it's golden hour when it's not, it's just past that, you know. And then highlights, I'm gonna bring in some warmth to the highlights, especially because I want to balance out the blue a bit. And that's one thing that can be really great about color grading is you can do what's called split toning, which is, you know, putting opposing colors in the shadows or highlights. And, you know, looking at the color wheel is the best way to figure out which colors are opposite because it's whatever color is on the other side of the wheel. So if you're ever like, oh, I want to put pink in the highlights, what would the opposite of that be for the shadows? Look at the wheel and it's like, oh, okay, a greenish. Split toning is a thing where you can add opposite colors to highlights and shadows, and it creates just a more visually dynamic image, and you can have a lot of fun with that and do different looks. Okay, highlights. I really like what it's doing with the highlights. It's really warming up the sky, that beautiful, gorgeous orangey pink sky. I'm gonna toggle off the color grading panel for a second, see what we're looking at. Okay, so that was before we did any color grading. Boom, here is with color grading. So this is very fun. And then let's go down into blending and see how blended we want it to be. I like the idea of it being a little bit more blended. I don't know if I could explain with words why it's doing this necessarily, but it feels warmer when it's more blended. It feels like making the shadows of like her veil and the floor and everything, like making those parts less cool, which is great. And then balance. Ooh, this is kind of cool because then it's like emphasizing the oranges and the pinks of the sky. Okay, let's try toggling off color grading, toggling on. To me, that's like a huge difference. This is already a way better photo. We're emphasizing the beauty of that sunset color that's out there, even though it's right past golden hour in this photo. And we still have blues in the shadows and everything, but I feel like that's just because that's the time of day it was. And I don't want to pull all the blues out necessarily because I do want it to feel like it's right after sunset. I'm going to go back to HSL really quick, and I might bring up some of my sliders a little bit more here and see what we get. Let's see what happens if I do mess with blue. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to bring it up and then luminance down. And yeah, Go in the teal. And then I'm gonna create a linear gradient, and I'm going to make it warmer and a little desaturated. And what we're gonna do is just apply that over this bottom portion where I don't want it to be as blue, but I was trying to put more blue up in the clouds there. And then, okay, I'm gonna click the eyeball, see what it looks like before the mask, after the mask, before the mask, after the mask. See, I love that because now I am not fighting so much with trying to add blue to the sky, but then pull it away from her veil and the pavement. So now we got a little more balance. So before, after, before, after. Very happy with this. Honestly, something else I would do with this image, personally, I might duplicate it and have another version of it where we've got, by the way, I just hit the X to change the crop to landscape. I might do this, put them in the bottom 2/3 there. And then it kind of like makes it so that you're not so distracted by, you know, the parking garage and everything. Like maybe you're just more focused on them and the beautiful sky. Like that's an option. Is sometimes I'll do multiple crops for people. Sometimes I'll just change it to this and leave it like that. But sometimes if I'm like, I don't know which one I like more, I'll do both. I really like what we did. I might even cool it down a little bit because again, I want to make sure I'm not trying to make this look like golden hour when it's not, you know? So might do that. Something like that. That's what I'm feeling good about. This is the last one. Yeah. Last photo I got going on here. You might have seen this one in a previous video, but I thought this would be a perfect example because greens are something that you can see a lot of variety with in different people's editing. Some people really love blue greens. Some people really love the warmer greens that dip more into the yellowy orange almost. And so I thought what would be fun is to create 2 copies of this photo, and we're going to edit one trying to make it look as natural and true to life as possible, and then we're going to edit the other one to make it look more like the first Twilight movie, because I want to. Okay, so I've created a copy. We'll make this one the true to life here. So here we are, and then auto white balance, but bringing this down, and highlights down a bit. I'm going to bring contrast up a bit, maybe blacks down a little bit. I don't want this to feel like HDR, but I do want it to pop to a certain degree. I hate the purpley magenta looking stuff in the road and in the trees. So I'm going to go to hue. And I know this looks kind of reddish orange. I feel like that's probably what we're working with here. Yeah, red and orange is what's popping up here. So I'm going to basically, my goal is to get it as far from purple as possible. So I'm going to take the red and make it orange. Orange or make it yellow. Whoa, look how big of a difference the orange made. Like this way, it's like, oh yeah, purple. This way, whoa, way more green. So it looks like orange is where the big difference is. So I might even just reset the red, which if you guys haven't seen previous videos, a little reminder, if you want to reset a slider, just double tap the number itself and that'll take it back to, come on. No, wait, sorry, the name. Yeah, that's what'll take it back to 0. And then for luminance, I'm going to bring the luminance of orange down a little bit. This is decent. I'm not going to do too much with this, so I feel good about that. We're just doing a really clean, basic, very little to that. Now, back to the other one. We're going to edit this one, try to make it look very blue, very green, very like cool toned, Twilight-esque. And here we go. So auto, get rid of that. I'm going to bring that down way more into the greens because that is the direction we want to lean with this. And then shadows and blacks, we definitely want to feel like we're in Forks, Washington here, people. So making it feel even more shadowy, even darker, you know? And then texture and clarity, I'm going to bring it down by 1 each, just by 5 each. And then for hue of green, I am going to take that more toward the blue because that matches that aesthetic more, versus if we went this way towards the yellows, it's trying to make it look like it's, you know, Southern California forest or something. So bringing it up by just like by 3, nothing crazy, just to bring it up a little bit. so that we're more in the blue greens than in the warm greens. And then luminance of the green I'm going to bring down so that we're getting that darker look. And then I'm going to go down to saturation of orange, bring it down a bit, hue, bring it over quite a bit there. And then let's go mess with the color grading wheels now. This is where we're going to have some fun. Shadows. We want blue in the shadows, absolutely. So we're gonna go all in with that. Maybe I bring it a little more teal. What feels more bright? Yeah, because I want it to feel kind of bluish green. This is probably gonna look crazy. This is part of the reason why I wanted to edit one like I would normally edit and then do the Twilight one, is because then we have the comparison, not just of a before and after, but also between what I would normally have and what this crazy edit looks like. All right, that gives it that kind of darker feel that I'm looking for. Highlights, let's see, what do we want to do for highlights? Should we do blue as well? Because, I mean, we are going Twilight with this, aren't we? I don't want to get too wacky. There we go. Do we want to include it in the midtones? I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to figure out what the midtones are in this photo. So I'm going to put orange-ish as the hue and bring the saturation up like crazy just so I can see what the midtones are in this image. Okay, so that makes it pretty clear what they are. So I'm going to do a similar thing where I'm going to bring it into the bluish green area, bring it up a bit, and I think I'm going to bring the luminance down on that because we just want it to look gray, cloudy, that kind of thing. Blending, I might go a little more this way to try to make it look a little more natural. And then balance, it doesn't matter too much, but I'm leaning more toward the highlights there. And then I don't think there's anything else in HSL I want to change. Maybe bring the luminance down on that a little more again. A huge part of like color grading and editing in general is just kind of messing with things to see what results you get. You don't want to be afraid to just tinker with your settings. That's the only way to learn what you like. And over time, as you do this kind of stuff, which I don't usually edit things to make it look like Twilight, but over time as you do this sort of thing, you'll notice more and more that you can do these things quickly. Just like with anything, the more you practice it, the more instinctual it becomes, the more, you know, second nature it becomes. So yeah, I'm not used to making things look like it's from Twilight, so this is taking me a lot longer than editing normally does. Okay. Shadows feel good, blacks feel good, and then bring it up some more. Feels too blue. That's just because that's the goal of what we're doing. So let's do that before and after right there for you. We took it from this to this in the hopes of making it Twilighty. Let's go to my regular, really simple edit. Here we go. Hold your breath. Whoa, that's so weird. And this one looks so purple in comparison. Okay, let's do before and after of this one. Before, after. That looks like a good edit to me, you know. My eyes definitely are seeing things blue right now because this looks so purple. But this looks like a good basic edit to me. And then that one again. Oh man. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my normal looking edit as reference photo. And then I'm going to go click on my crazy color graded one. And then I'm going to come here. This button will tell you, it'll show you your reference photo and your current active photo. Reference, active. So this is my normal edit. This is our Twilight-ish edit, which I think needs a lot of work. I think I didn't quite nail the Twilight look, but you know, we tried. So that's just kind of fun. You can see the impact that color grading can have and how you do want to be careful with it because small changes can actually lead to way bigger results than you may be expecting. And again, the longer you stare at it, the more you become desensitized to it. For all I know, this picture right now could be like neon green and maybe I just have no clue because my eyes have become desensitized. This is one of the many ways that you can mess with color grading to create an image that you want. And you can have a lot of fun with that. Let me know in the comments if you guys hate what I did or if you had fun with me. And let me know if you've messed around with color grading, the panel specifically, or just, you know, color grading, including HSL and all that, white balance.